310 phase_essential_points_of_the_key_their_distinction Phase 6, Teachings on the Essential Points of Practice and the Key Distinctions. Then Bodhisattva Vajra of pristine awareness asked, O teacher, Bhagavan, when practicing this unsurpassed, supreme jnana, the profound and secret great perfection, are there or are there not pitfalls and obstacles that lead one astray? If there are, teacher, please explain what they are. He replied, O Vajra of pristine awareness, when you first establish the profound view, there is the danger of mistaking understanding for realization. Why? Understanding is just taking in the oral explanation of your teacher. This is like memorizing the words of a textbook without examining their meaning. By merely reciting what you have heard, without fathoming its meaning, you may have the conceit of thinking, I know this, but it has not really entered your mainstream. This is mere understanding, not realization. One who arrogantly takes it for realization is like someone who has never seen a king's treasury and has no claim to it, but who has heard others' reports about the treasury and memorized them, and then thinks, that is my treasury. This is utterly futile. As for realization, whether it concerns explanations by your teacher or whether it is fathoming the real meaning of the tantras, oral transmissions, and pith instructions, or whether it is something that emerges from the expanse of your own wisdom, at first you may understand only a fraction. Then, with that as a catalyst, you repeatedly investigate and come to a subtle, precise knowledge of how all appearing phenomena are non-objective and empty from their own side. Finally, you decisively fathom the one taste of great emptiness, the fact that all of samsara and nirvana naturally arises from the expanse of the ground and is not established as anything else. This is realization. If you lack such firm, vast, and profound wisdom of realization, free of the slightest doubt, then if the whole world, with its gods, were to insist repeatedly that samsara and nirvana are autonomous, permanent, stable, and immutable, this would deter you from the path of liberation. The nature of realization is that of meditation, for there is no meditation superior to realization. First you understand, then you gain experience, and finally you acquire the confidence of realization. Without this, there is nothing that deserves to be called the view, or meditation, for there is not even a trace of them. So be aware of how indispensable it is for firm realization to arise in your mainstream. Not knowing how to distinguish between realization and gaining confidence, many people mistake one for the other and thereby become confused. So learn how to make this distinction. Realization refers to correctly knowing with certainty the manner in which the nature of the grounds and paths and the triad of samsara, nirvana, and the path are all completely present in pristine awareness itself. There are many people who say that the knowledge of those who endure great hardships and experience myriad joys and sorrows is genuine realization, but that the knowledge of those who gain immediate insight into the nature of reality does not count as realization. That is incorrect. Consider this analogy. Some very devout people wishing to make a pilgrimage to the three types of holy representations in Lhasa, Samjay, and so on courageously make a long and arduous journey to these places of pilgrimage and encounter these holy icons. Some other people who were born in these pilgrimage sites also encounter these holy representations without any hardship or display of courage. There is no difference in the encounters of these two groups of people. What they are encountering is the three types of representations. There is no difference in their encounters, and in particular, people who were born in these holy places have the same unimpeded knowledge of all the outer, inner, and secret representations, as those who visit them from afar. Likewise, there is not the slightest difference between someone who identifies ultimate reality, the mode of existence of suckness, after experiencing many hardships, joys, and sorrows, and someone who establishes, by means of discerning primordial consciousness, the identitylessness of all the phenomena of samsara and nirvana, and then directly realizes and knows the mode of existence of ultimate reality. What each one needs to do is to ascertain ultimate reality, the mode of existence of suckness, and identify pristine awareness that is present in the ground. There is no difference whatsoever between these two people. Realizing, ascertaining, and fathoming the meaning is called the view. As for acquiring confidence, first you identify awareness, then you bring forth an active, wonderfully spacious pristine awareness, and by practicing it uninterruptedly, finally you achieve stability within yourself. Then, without any deviation in terms of times or situations, like the absence of darkness once dawn has broken, it is said that you acquire confidence for yourself. As soon as you first gain realization, if you do not acquire confidence by applying yourself to practice, even though you have identified your own essential nature, you will die as an ordinary person, and you will continue to wander in samsara. Likewise, even if you possess a mountain of food but do not eat it, it will be of no use and you will die of starvation. Even though you own a castle filled with clothing, if you do not wear it, you will die from exposure to the elements. Therefore, recognize the vital importance of acquiring confidence. If you do not know how to distinguish between the mind and pristine awareness, you will confuse the mind for pristine awareness, which will unfortunately lead to obstacles to achieving the state of liberation. So know how to distinguish them. As for the mind, there are the deluded mind that clings to appearances, the mind that seeks the path by way of negation and affirmation, and the mind that takes consciousness as the path. The deluded mind that clings to appearances is the ordinary mind of sentient beings who do not seek the path and who do not see an entrance to the authentic path. The mind that seeks the path is said to take the mind as its path, for in this case, the mind observes the mind, thoughts are observed with a conceptual mind, and you seek the path of merely arousing pleasure and pain through intellectual fabrications and the acceptance and rejection of virtue and vice. As for the mind that takes consciousness as the path, the experience of unimpeded ordinary consciousness, which is the ground of the mind, is not the realization of the view. As a result of such practice, outer appearances are reduced to an ethically neutral state, and since these appearances are taken to be real, reification is not counteracted. Inwardly, your own body appears to be ethically neutral, so the fixation of reifying the body is not counteracted. And since both outer and inner appearances are taken to be ethically neutral and autonomous, you do not transcend the mind, so this, too, is called the mind. Even if this were called pristine awareness, like giving a boy's name to an unborn fetus, the characteristic of ascertaining pristine awareness in itself would not have been realized. Unawareness is failing to realize samsara and nirvana as great emptiness. The terms awareness and unawareness are known conventionally by way of their respective functions. Pristine awareness first establishes everything included in the phenomenal world of samsara and nirvana as emptiness. The reflections of the planets and stars in the ocean have no existence apart from the ocean, yet they are of the same nature as the displays of the ocean. Likewise, rainbows in the sky have no existence apart from the sky, yet those appearances are of the same nature as the displays of the sky. In the same manner, pristine awareness is actualized by correctly recognizing that things appear even though nothing exists from the side of the appearances, and that all appearances of the physical worlds and the sentient inhabitants have no existence apart from the ground Shugatagava, while those appearances are of the same nature as the displays of the ground Shugatagava. Like the dawn breaking in the sky, without need for meditation, you comprehend samsara and nirvana as being totally subsumed within great enlightenment. Without need for investigation, there is your own awareness without grasping, that all of samsara and nirvana is like the reflection of the planets and stars in the ocean. Without need for modification, there is natural liberation in the absolute space of the ground, the great purity and equality of samsara and nirvana. Without need for objectification, there is a spacious dissolution into the great expanse with no object, obstruction, or intentionality. In this way you experience and gain mastery over the inexhaustible ornamental wheels of the enlightened body, speech, mind, qualities, and activities of the jhanas and jnanaputras of the three times. Ultimately, simply by identifying the Dharmakaya, pristine awareness that is present in the ground, you gain power over the life force of samsara and nirvana. This is not a discussion of receiving empowerment through such things as water and symbolic pictures that are used as methods to awaken the mind. Rather, you know you have obtained the empowerments of the jhanas and jnanaputras and the oral transmissions of all the writings that emerge from primordial consciousness, pristine awareness. Thus, you have already simultaneously obtained all empowerments and oral transmissions. Therefore, recognize the importance of not mistaking the mind for pristine awareness. If you do not know how to distinguish between mentation and wisdom, you will confuse mentation for wisdom, as a result of which you are in danger of wasting your entire life. So know how to distinguish them. Mentation is the mind of every sentient being, which serves as the basis for the emergence of all conceptions. It is the lucid, clear nature of the unimpeded appearance of objects to the mind, and it is just this that transforms all appearances into their referential objects. You may identify unimpeded mentation, this whirring consciousness, as being of the essential nature of meditation. However, since this ethically neutral consciousness of mentation is the basis of samsara, even if you achieve stability in it, this will lead you only to the two higher realms of existence and not higher. So mentation does not transform into wisdom. Since mentation does not become wisdom, all positive and negative karmas lead solely to samsara, and they never act as causes for liberation. So it is crucial to recognize the importance of not becoming absorbed in this. It is a disaster for all those meditators who remain solely in this state without ever transcending it. It is from this that errors arise, stemming from the nature of all meditative experiences of vividness, from the nature of all ethically neutral states, and from various, miscellaneous extrasensory perceptions of seeing visions of gods and demons. All those who take this alone as being the path will remain endlessly deluded in samsara, they are not even moving in the direction of liberation and omniscience. Wisdom is a subsequent knowledge that establishes everything included in the phenomenal world of samsara and nirvana as being empty, identityless, and non-objective. This is called the wisdom that realizes identitylessness with respect to that which has always been unreal and empty. Due to this powerful method, all appearances and mindsets are gradually extinguished in absolute space, just as all land is saturated by the moisture of the ocean. The emergence in your mind stream of the great wisdom that realizes identitylessness, like salt dissolving in water, calms all appearing phenomena in the ocean of the original ground. The emergence in your mind stream of the wisdom that realizes identitylessness, like warmth suffusing ice, calms all subjective and objective phenomena in the original, primordial ground, absolute space. The emergence in your mind stream of the wisdom that realizes identitylessness, like the wind carrying camphor, extinguishes samsara in the great wind of reversion. In the mind of a person in whom the wisdom that realizes identitylessness has arisen, all appearances do seem to exist, but in the depths of that person's mind they are known to be like illusions and dreams, so they are released as being identityless. For a person in whom the wisdom that realizes identitylessness has arisen, whatever may be craved or grasped, deep down that person has acquired confidence in identitylessness. In the mind of a person in whom the wisdom that realizes identitylessness has arisen, all the taproots of samsara disintegrate. Thus, the wisdom that realizes identitylessness ascertains samsara and nirvana as great emptiness. The great wisdom that experiences reality knows how all the sublime qualities of the path and the fruition are perfected. With great, omnipresent, all-seeing wisdom, you experience the Dharmakaya, pristine awareness that is present in the ground. With the wisdom that knows reality as it is, you know ultimate reality, the mode of existence of suckness. With the wisdom that perceives the full range of phenomena, you perceive the taproots of all the phenomena of samsara, and you perceive and experience all the inexhaustible ornamental wheels of the enlightened body, speech, mind, qualities, and activities of the jhinas and jhinaputras of the three times. In reality, when you fathom the vastness and depth of the great wisdom that realizes identitylessness, this is nothing other than a natural expression of the essential nature of pristine awareness. O Vajra of pristine awareness, if you do not know how to distinguish between conditioned consciousness and primordial consciousness, you may think conditioned consciousness is primordial consciousness and consequently circle about in delusion. So learn how to distinguish between them. Conditioned consciousness is the naturally present radiance and clarity of the unimpeded objects that emerge in the expanse of mentation, which, when they enter the sense doors, are bound by self-grasping. When looking out through the sense doors, that which appears as seeing, hearing, feeling, experiencing, and contacting external sensory appearances is called conditioned consciousness. Insofar as conditioned consciousness individually apprehends and recognizes names and things, and arouses the three closely held feelings of pleasure, pain, and indifference, all things appear to be separate and distinct. They are given individual names, and things are apprehended as being distinct. This acts as the basis, from which emerge thoughts of attachment to your own side and aversion to the other's side. The good is apprehended as being good and is made into an object of hope, thus proliferating thoughts of yearning. The bad is apprehended as being bad, and this serves as a basis from which various thoughts of anxiety arise. What is called mentation manifests as the consciousness of appearances, it turns into appearing objects, and it causes appearances to be made manifest. From the very moment that a thought and a subject arise, what is called mind merges non-dually with appearances and vanishes. Primordial consciousness is the natural glow of the ground, and it expresses itself as the five facets of primordial consciousness. Specifically, in the manifest state of the ground, great primordial consciousness, which has been forever present, abides as the aspect of lucidity and clarity, like the dawn breaking and the sun rising. It is not blank like an unimpeded darkness that knows nothing. All appearances are naturally present, without arising or ceasing. Just as heat is naturally present in the nature of fire, moisture is present in the nature of water, and coolness is present in the nature of wind, due to the unimpeded power in the nature of primordial consciousness, there is total knowledge and total awareness of all phenomena, without its ever merging with or entering into objects. Primordial consciousness is self-emergent, naturally clear, and free of outer and inner obscuration. It is the all-pervasive, radiant, clear infinity of space, free of contamination. What are the causes and conditions by which conditioned consciousness is transformed into primordial consciousness? They are accurately knowing how thoughts of the phenomena of samsara and nirvana emerge, including the 8 aggregates of conditioned consciousness and sensory appearances, and realizing the manner in which they are naturally perfect as displays of the kayas and facets of primordial consciousness in the nature of ultimate reality. Then, from the time that you identify the Dharmakaya, pristine awareness that is present in the ground, your conditioned consciousness is transmuted into displays of primordial consciousness. Then, regarding conditioned consciousness, by the illusory display of concepts of the self alone, primordial consciousness takes on the guise of conditioned consciousness, like a pile of stones being mistaken for a man. The transformation of this into primordial consciousness is like recognizing a scarecrow for what it is, instead of seeing it as a man. In this way, the correct realization of the mode of being of conditioned consciousness transforms it into primordial consciousness. It is not that conditioned consciousness must vanish into absolute space and primordial consciousness must arise from somewhere else. Instead, know that it just seems that way because of the functions of self-grasping and identitylessness. Conditioned consciousness is what makes the first moment of knowledge emerge in the aspect of the object, just as various images of planets and stars emerge in the ocean. What arises is closely held by conceptual consciousness, it is bound by reification, and you thereby become deluded. Knowledge of the reasons for this brings you to primordial consciousness. O Vajra of pristine awareness, if you do not know how to distinguish between the substrate and the Dharmakaya, you may take the substrate and the substrate consciousness as the path, in which case you will not transcend the three realms. Why? The actual substrate is something immaterial, devoid of thought, a space like vacuity and blankness in which appearances are suspended. Know that you enter this state in deep, dreamless sleep, when you faint, and when you are dying. As a result of engaging in conceptual negation and affirmation, the substrate is aroused. Understand that if someone takes this as sublime meditation and stabilizes it, this can lead to dementia, stupor, and total ignorance. There are some teachers who identify this as the great intellect transcending extinction into ultimate reality. If you get stuck there, it is certain that you will be cast into existence in the realm of gods who are devoid of discernment. Someone with an experience of vacuity and clarity who directs his attention inward may bring a stop to all external appearances and come to a state in which he believes there are no appearances or thoughts. This experience of luminosity from which one dares not part is the substrate consciousness. This is aroused by the power of being bound by the fetters of meditation, but some teachers think it is the clear light. Others think it is the pristine awareness of non-meditation, and yet others identify it as the insertion of the energy mind into the central channel. In reality, it is the substrate consciousness, so if you get stuck there, you will be cast into the formless realm, without coming even a bit closer to the state of liberation. With the substrate and the substrate consciousness you observe your own mind, but you do not recognize or know samsara and nirvana as your own appearances. The Dharmakaya is spontaneously actualized as the essential nature of the purity and equality of samsara and nirvana. It is emptiness, the infinity of space, its display is groundless and rootless. It is great, unobstructed non-objectivity. The facets of primordial consciousness and enlightened qualities of the Buddhas do not enhance it, the terrible vices, obscurations, and miseries of sentient beings do not impair it. Not becoming good or bad, it is the great, immutable, originally pure, all-pervasive absolute space of the ground. Once its mode of existence is determined, identifying its manifest state within yourself is simply holding your own ground. It is very deluded to think that the Dharmakaya did not exist previously and that it newly comes into existence. The realm in which the absolute space of the Dharmakaya manifests is non-dual with space. All phenomena included in samsara and nirvana are naturally present in the emptiness of ultimate reality, absolute space that is free of the extremes of conceptual elaboration. It is called the embodiment of the totality of all facets of primordial consciousness and qualities as perfect, spontaneously actualized displays. Thoroughly fathoming the mode of being of this Dharmakaya, Samantabhadra, is realization. By experiencing this state, you know that just as all the reflections of stars and planets in the ocean are displays of the ocean itself, and just as all the physical worlds and the sentient inhabitants are displays of one space, all of samsara and nirvana consists of displays of the one Dharmakaya. They are all great, unimpeded effulgences of the Dharmakaya. Just as the reflections of planets and stars in the ocean are subsumed in the ocean, and just as all the physical worlds and the sentient inhabitants are subsumed in space, so are samsara, nirvana, and the path all subsumed in the one Dharmakaya. Experiencing this reality, dwelling in it, entering the womb of the nature of existence, coming to the nature of being within yourself, and ascertaining this to be free of good and bad and of benefit and harm is the experience of realization by which you acquire confidence. And this is enlightenment. O Vajra of pristine awareness, if you do not know how to distinguish between what is and what is not the path, there is the danger that you may be led astray to what is not the path, and, unfortunately, not actualize the genuine path. So learn how to distinguish between them. The path of the perfection of wisdom consists of correctly realizing the view, the essential point of emptiness, and simply taking this knowledge as the path. Once you have realized the meaning of great emptiness, you know the nature of the whole of samsara, nirvana, and the path, and you experience absolute space. This is called the pristine awareness of the great perfection. The lucid, clear ground, free of contamination, is taken as the path. If you take consciousness as the path, you are taking aspects of consciousness as the path. If you take the displays of the ground, the purity and equality of samsara and nirvana, as the path, this is taking the essential nature as the path. It is called the authentic path. What is called viewing discursive thoughts with discursive thoughts is not the path. With respect to discursive thoughts, you may engage in such evaluations as denying and affirming and adopting the good and rejecting the bad, and finally regard merely unstructured consciousness as the ultimate view and meditation. But that is not the path. Even if you take the creative expressions of the mind and the essential nature of the mind as the path, since the mind is the basis of delusion, you will certainly not transcend the three realms. So that is not the path. O Vajra of pristine awareness, if you do not know how to distinguish between mastering the ground and drifting off to an ethically neutral state, you will mistakenly fall under the influence of the ethically neutral state, and you will remain as deluded as you were before. Why? In the absence of a name, there is no basis for the appearance of the name. In the absence of a phenomenon, there is no basis for the appearance of the phenomenon. In the absence of benefit or harm, there is no basis for the appearance of benefit and harm. In the absence of samsara and nirvana, there is no basis for the appearance of samsara and nirvana. In the absence of sensory objects, there is no basis for the appearance of sensory objects. You may establish that all such bases are non-existent and know them to be non-existent. But if you regard the reference of those bases of appearances to be non-existent, you have succumbed to a nihilistic view. For if not even the bases of appearances or objects existed, there would be no reference of appearances. Mastering the ground means realizing the clear, empty nature, free of conceptual elaboration, of the bases of appearances and their reference. This ground is present in the mind streams of all sentient beings, but it is tightly constricted by dualistic grasping, and it is regarded as external, firm, and solid. This is like water in its natural, fluid state freezing in a cold wind. It is due to dualistic grasping at subjects and objects that the ground, which is naturally free, becomes frozen into the appearances of things. So meditators who do not even know how dualistic grasping operates, however puffed up they may be, reduce the ground to an ethically neutral state. Therefore, however much they may meditate, they will not become enlightened. O Vajra of pristine awareness, if you do not know how to distinguish between delusion and liberation, you will go astray by mistaking delusion for liberation, resulting in your not attaining the great state of liberation. It is like this. There are three types of delusion: delusion in your mind stream, delusion regarding the path, and the delusion of going astray. 1. Delusion in your mind stream refers to the minds of all beings having become deluded by the ignorance of dualistic grasping, which prevents them from seeing the entrance to the path. 2. There are many kinds of delusion regarding the path. Specifically, you may spend your whole life observing and modifying discursive thoughts, which cause you to hold closely to various joys and sorrows. Some who do this become so deluded that they become delirious, like an irrigation canal that becomes blocked and overflows with swirling water. Some are deluded by taking a soothing sense of well-being as the best of meditations. Others fixate on a sense of luminosity and deludedly take that to be the most sublime of meditations. Some people cling to various obsessions with divine and demonic apparitions stemming from their experience of luminosity. Holding themselves to be supreme, they proceed to teach this to others, and driven by arrogance and conceit, they waste their lives in the pursuit of material gain. Even if they meditate, it is for that purpose. Even if others try to correct them, they do not accept this, and they cannot turn away from the path they are treading. Others take non-conceptuality and a blank sense of vacuity to be the foremost of meditations, and becoming absorbed in that, they spin around in a cycle of delusion. Still others, due to their ignorance of the view, devote their entire lives to the mere vacuous luminosity of consciousness. They are all said to be deluded with respect to the path. 3. As for the delusion of going astray, some people, before coming to the culmination of the path, take meditative experiences and views and meditations involving reified objects as the pinnacle of meditation, and they get stuck there. They then face death as ordinary people, and they suffer the delusion of having gone astray. There is also becoming deluded in error. What is this? First you establish the emptiness of all phenomena included in the universe of samsara and nirvana, and after recognizing this, you think, I have realized samsara and nirvana as great emptiness, so now I don't need to engage in the relative dharma of accumulating merit, nor do I need to meditate, and you proclaim these empty words to others. There are many such people who then waste their entire lives in distractions and spiritual sloth, and they face death as ordinary people. Others, after they have similarly recognized the nature of emptiness, think, now there is nothing whatsoever for me to practice, and they proclaim the superiority of their views. After misleading others with rituals and liturgies, when they die, they are caught by the ripening of the karma, and they step into the abyss of the miserable states of existence. That is a mistake. Some become satisfied by just hearing about and understanding emptiness, and they discard all practices of meditation as if they were clots of spittle. Maintaining that there is no need to guard all the samayas or vows, even if they were to have a direct vision of the Buddha, they would be snared by false views and misconceptions without even a trace of faith or reverence. As for their involvement in negative actions, they would experience no qualms even about the urge to kill a human being. If they felt the need to eat the Father's flesh, they would do so as if it were ambrosia. They take delight in material wealth acquired by cheating others, they partake of non-virtue as if it were medicine, and they reject virtue as if it were poison. Training in emptiness with such negative actions is like veering from a path on which you are seeking healing medicinal herbs and running into a plant that is poisonous to the touch. If emptiness becomes a cause for such negative actions, it is reduced to a demonic meditation, and in this life you are deluded as a Mara and a malevolent Rudra. Generally speaking, once you have realized emptiness, if all accumulations of meritorious, virtuous karma were non-existent and unnecessary, then all non-virtuous karma, material acquisitions, attachments, hatreds, and cravings should likewise be abandoned. However, if you reject all deeds of virtue and vice, and passively dwell in the state of emptiness, you brave guys might possibly do okay. But if you reject virtue and pursue non-virtue, don't you see that your midstreams become demonic and diabolical? If you recognize that, with respect to emptiness, virtue and vice do not exist, then lie down and rest on your bed, with no virtue or vice. If you are correct in your knowledge that virtue does not exist and in your refusal to engage in virtue, there is no point in engaging in vice either. So release yourself in non-action and remain there. If you know that vice does not exist, what is the point of indulging in it? If you think that vice does not exist and that engaging in evil conduct is emptiness, then since all sentient beings have just such an attitude and behavior, they should all have realized emptiness. Do you get it? Do you understand that people who engage in vice, evil, and non-virtuous deeds are in the depths of nihilism? If you truly realize the view of emptiness, you will see all acts of virtue and vice as being like children's games, so what is the point of pursuing them? In this way, once you have seen that all appearances are like illusions and dreams, if you completely release yourself into inactivity, just this is the conduct of emptiness. However, upon ascertaining the non-existence of virtue, someone may develop false views regarding the Dharma, and understanding that vices do not exist, he may continuously engage in non-virtuous behavior. In the end, the lords of hell will rise from the depths of nihilism and punish that person terribly for a long time. When such a person is endlessly tormented in the great dungeon of misery, what will he do then? If you say there are benefits to virtue in this lifetime, but add that virtue does not truly exist, or you dismiss it with indifference, or if you say there are disadvantages to evil, but you do not really take it seriously and hold to wrong views, then when you finally die, you will remember its drawbacks and you will tremble with fear. All the possessions and friends you have accumulated will be left behind, you will be terrified of the agents of the Lord of Death, and out of unbearable fear at the miseries of hell, your eyes will fill with tears. How tragic it will be when you claw at your chest and cannot avoid going to hell. At that time it will be too late to feel regret and too late to recall the drawbacks of evil, so consider, what will bring benefit now? Do you understand that you are going into battle after losing confidence in emptiness? Without succumbing to such delusions and false paths, know the utmost importance of realizing emptiness and practicing until you reach the grounds and paths to liberation. Having simply identified pristine awareness, some people lack even a trace of any meditation while claiming that they have actualized the extinction into ultimate reality and that there is nothing more to enlightenment than this. That is an enormous mistake. The qualities of realization mature through the power of gradual practice. Here is how you must reach the state of liberation. 1. First, through the power of identifying pristine awareness and practicing single-pointedly, an ineffable state occurs during all meditation sessions, and this is called the pristine awareness of identifying. 2. Next, by the power of earnest meditative practice from the time you get up in the morning until you fall asleep at night, never waver for even an instant from that state of awareness. This is called the pristine awareness of the expanse. 3. Finally, by the power of ardent meditation, pristine awareness uninterruptedly gains confidence within itself, and this is called the ongoing current of contemplation or pristine awareness in which confidence is acquired. Again, by the power of unimpeded meditation, thoughts of self-grasping turn into empty pristine awareness, and the ground of samsara is seen to be empty. The clinging of dualistic grasping is immediately released, and the appearances of yourself and others vanish into absolute space. All hatred for your enemies, attachment to your friends, hope for good things, fear of bad things, obsession with wealth, and craving for the 5 sensory objects vanishes into absolute space. You dwell, like space without activity, in the infinite expanse of ultimate reality, and this is certain liberation. If someone says, I have been extinguished into ultimate reality, since such words and thoughts are of the intellect and mentation, this reveals that no such extinction has occurred. If the appearances of illness arise for such a person, this indicates that illness and the location of the illness have not been extinguished. If there are appearances of hunger and thirst and of being warm and cold, they are indications of self-grasping. If someone says, even though I have no attachment, hatred, or obsessive craving, I act as if I did, such duplicity of pretending they have something they really don't indicates that no extinction has occurred. There is no reason why they would engage in such pretense, so this indicates that they have not been released into great, intellect transcending ultimate reality. Those who seek out and grasp at material possessions demonstrate that they are not liberated. Even if they maintain that they are liberated, the fallacy of their assertion is revealed by examining the signs. Those who say they are liberated whether or not they meditate and who have not progressed in the slightest beyond all ordinary types of activity reveal the falsity of their own words, and they become objects of great derision for wise people who possess sublime qualities. Visionary experiences vanish like mist, without imparting the slightest benefit or harm. Realization is like space, for it has immutably come to the nature of reality. Whether or not you are liberated is revealed by examining the signs of both. The measure of liberation can be understood through your dreams. 1. Superior people purify the dreams in the clear light and become thoroughly integrated with it. 2. Middling people recognize the dreams as dreams and are able to engage in various types of emanations and transformations. 3. The least of people find that the stream of negative dreams produced by habitual propensities is cut, and they have only good dreams. When sleep arises as the clear light, you acquire confidence in terms of the enlightened view of the Dharmakaya. When you acquire mastery over the displays of emanation and transformation in your dreams, you can transform your own appearances into displays of the Sambhogakaya. When you have only good dreams, without a single bad one, you are definitely released as a Nirmanakaya. These are taught as methods for investigating your own degree of spiritual maturation. The state of extinction into ultimate reality is one in which all appearances of things have dissolved into great intellect transcending ultimate reality. Thus, you do not mentally engage for even an instant in the affairs of samsara but remain inactive. This is definite liberation. Strive diligently in the practice of profound meditation until you meet the criteria of liberation. Even if you have heard many teachings and know many treatises of the sutras and tantras, if your mind-stream is not liberated by great meditative experience, there is not the slightest benefit, and you must continue wandering in samsara. Thus, liberating your own mind-stream is the vast treasury of all learning, the great treasure of wisdom and great primordial consciousness, and the most sublime of all meditations. So recognize the indispensability of striving in essential practice. Hold fast to it. Rely upon it. Realize it. If you derive no benefit for your own mind-stream, and focus on the many implications of the words you have heard, your life will be spent in vain. Moreover, you will have a hard time finding anyone to teach, for you will only generate powerful pride and conceit in others, making it very difficult for them to receive any benefit. Even if you acquire enormous prestige and notoriety, this human life is like an episode in a dream and like a visit to the marketplace. So do not be beguiled, for the time of death is coming and there is no time for pursuing prestige and fame. Some people, when their lives are at an end, do not notice the occurrence of portents of death, such as advanced age, the loss of physical strength, and the decline of their mental powers. Even so, they praise themselves, thinking, I am great, I am good. Still attached and clinging to greatness and prestige, the craving does not cease. When you analyze this, feel compassion for such people who do not see the futility of wasting their lives in the pursuit of status and honor. Do not rely upon anyone, but entrust yourself to the three jewels. Do not cling to other affairs, but apply yourself to the sublime Dharma. Do not cherish other hopes, but place all your hopes in the state of liberation. Do not waste the rest of your life, but embrace it in essential practice. You do not really achieve fame by working for it, so yearn for the kingdom of the Dharmakaya. Without deceiving yourself, apply yourself to a genuine spiritual practice for dying. This is the only time you will attain a human life, so make sure that it is meaningful. Now is the only time you will encounter such profound practical instructions, so do not throw them away, but put them into practice. Without deceiving yourself, never forget death. When you go to the next world, you will do so without friends or relatives, so dispense with activities for protecting your family. When you run into death, since you must leave your body and possessions behind, and since there is no way for your friends and relatives to accompany you, utterly sever craving for and attachment to anything. For those who uphold the lineage, these are highly cherished, quintessential pith instructions pointing out the supreme path for attaining liberation in this lifetime. So put them into practice. Fuse them inseparably with your mind. If you lack these vital points, you will not attain liberation in this life, so guard them as the very essence of practical advice. O Vajra of pristine awareness, if you do not know how to distinguish between Buddhas and sentient beings, you may mistake sentient beings for Buddhas. Deluded, ignorant fools who do so run the risk of wasting their human lives. Why? Buddhas are so designated because they have cleansed the stains of ignorance in absolute space and fully increased all facets of primordial consciousness and enlightened qualities. Infinitely pervasive like space, such beings are free of the 8 extremes of conceptual elaboration, are endowed with the 3 doors of liberation, and are enlightened in the great bliss of equality. The Dharmakaya, free of signs and names, is open and unobstructed. Free of change within the 3 times, it has no fundamental ground. Apart from that, do not think that Buddhas have bodies. If you thought so, Buddhas would have to have parents, and then wouldn't you regard them as sentient beings who have fallen to the extreme of birth? Do not think that Buddhas have a self. If you thought so, wouldn't you regard them as sentient beings bound by the ignorance of being single individuals? Do not think that Buddhas have realms, with inhabitants, called Buddha fields. If you thought so, wouldn't you regard them as sentient beings bound by dualistic grasping? Do not think that Buddhas have eyes. If you thought so, wouldn't you regard them as sentient beings with visual consciousness? Do not think that Buddhas have ears. If you thought so, they would seem to have auditory consciousness together with sounds, and wouldn't you regard them as sentient beings having the same? Do not think that Buddhas have noses. If you thought so, wouldn't you regard them as sentient beings involved in olfactory dualistic grasping? Do not think that Buddhas have tongues. If you thought so, wouldn't you regard them as sentient beings involved in gustatory dualistic grasping? Do not think that Buddhas have bodies. If you thought so, wouldn't you regard them as sentient beings involved in tactile dualistic grasping? Do not think that Buddhas arose in the past. If you thought so, wouldn't you regard them as sentient beings who have fallen to the extreme of death? Do not think that Buddhas will arise in the future. If you thought so, wouldn't you regard them as deluded beings who are subject to birth? Do not think that Buddhas exist in the present. If you thought they existed somewhere, wouldn't you regard them as permanent, immutable beings? Do not think that Buddhas are teachers with disciples. If you thought so, wouldn't you regard them as sentient beings who reify themselves and others? Do not think that Buddhas are favorably or unfavorably influenced by receiving homage, offerings, and service. If you thought so, wouldn't you regard them as beings who have prejudicial clinging concerning the good and the bad? Do not think that Buddhas have individual locations in the east, south, west, north, or intermediate directions. If you thought so, wouldn't you regard them as sentient beings with identifiable distinctions? In short, if any Buddhas were like sentient beings, they would come when beckoned. If they were served as masters, they would be directly seen just as masters are, and you would have to hope that they would respond as such. But you should understand something from the fact that however you might call upon them and revere them, not even an atom comes into existence. If Buddhas were established in any of the 3 times, they would have to be produced by the intention to manifest themselves, and they would be established by the power of meditation. In that case, since they would have to be first non-existent and then freshly established, that would indicate that there would be an impulse of intention and an object of meditation. This demonstrates that they are not established in any of the 3 times. A sentient being is one who grasps at and is bound by grasping at a personal identity. Grasped objects foster grasping at the identities of phenomena. Then obsessive clinging and holding to them proliferates an unbroken chain link of discursive thoughts, and one is dazed by roaming in cycles of delusion. Through the power of practicing single-pointedly and with great fortitude, ultimately, the contaminated psychophysical aggregates vanish right down to the level of atoms. Then the complete signs of having actualized perfect Buddhahood occur, including such events as roaring sounds, earthquakes, being enveloped in light, and the simultaneous entrance of the sun and moon into the mouth of Rahula. Now the profound, swift path to enlightenment as a great transference rainbow body in one life and with one body simultaneously completes all the collections of merit and knowledge without having to accumulate great collections of merit for many countless eons. If you do not know the entrance to the secret shortcut of direct crossing over, it is difficult to transfer impure mental states and appearances into absolute space. So you should know the practical guidance on directly transferring all mental states and appearances into the absolute space of the clear light, ultimate reality.